welcome back to episode 79 of Tall Boy Radio. We had an interesting episode last week. We had a guy called Dave on asking his questions. Similar sort of principle this week. And again, we don't know what those questions are going to be. But before we say hello to Dave, let's go around the room, tell everybody what we're drinking and any shout outs that you'd like to give. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. Tonight I am drinking a Guinness, which I think is a first for me. I think Adam might have had it maybe once on the podcast, but it's certainly a first for me on the podcast. And it might be a little giveaway as to what I might be talking about later. But I just want to give a quick shout out to Dave from Double Trouble. Thanks for the beer. It arrived. I've sampled it, as he did say, very nice to drink in the outside. Lovely, sunny, nice hot day, nice crisp sort of golden ale. So yeah, thanks to Dave for coming on last week as well. I really enjoyed it. Good laugh as always with Dave, and look forward to the next time.
Yeah, good episode. It was a good episode. Andy?
Howdy. I'm on the Double Trouble beer. I'm on my last bottle. Drinking it all weekend. But yeah, drinking out of a Beavertown glass.
Beautiful.
That was obviously dishwashable. And for myself, I'm drinking a beer. It's one of my shout-outs, actually. I want to say thank you to my brother for buying me this one for my birthday. I've mentioned it a few times on the podcast. Attila the Hen. Finally got my hands on a bottle of it, thanks to my brother. So thank you, John, for buying me that one. So it comes in at 12%, although if you check on Untapped, it's 12.7. And it has a pretty decent rating on there. And it's got about 38 IBU, so it's nice and bitter. And if you look at the colour of that, that is an amber ale. You wouldn't know it from the colour, but that's been aged in bourbon barrels, and that is an absolute humdinger. And should I get through that, which let's face it, I will, then I also have a bottle of the old Double Trouble as well to test out. And I've got to say, I've tried a bottle already, not got through all of mine yet, but yeah. It's a good one. It is a really good one. So yeah, any other shout outs? Just want to quickly say happy birthday, Nana Wiz, because it's my mum's birthday today, 72 years young. So
happy birthday, Nana Wiz.
We know you listen. We know she does, but hopefully somebody will play it to her. So finally then, let's say hello to Dave. Dave, if you don't know, does the internet part of our business in terms of he set up the website and did a few other things for us. So Dave, you want to introduce yourself and tell us what you're drinking?
Yeah, so it's Dave. I've known Gaz pretty much my entire life. I think we went to nursery together.
Yep,
so
we did.
Probably from about the age of 3.
Yeah.
And Ad since secondary school, mainly through sixth form. Andy, I know I've been in the same room as you twice, but I don't actually know whether I've spoken to you or not. But hi, Andy.
Howdy.
I'm drinking it's just a couple of bottles I picked up on the way, things I've not drank before. It's a double Maxim premium brown ale. Apparently it's all flavour with no flannel. It's all right. And because I've heard this many times in this podcast, if I've run out of that, which I will, I've got something called a Saltaire Blonde, which apparently is a light and refreshing ale.
Yeah, I've looked at the Saltaire Blonde. It's decent. It's light. It's about 4%, so it's light, but it's decent.
It's a good one. Yeah. John had that when he was around here the other day. It's a good one. So who wants to go first then with a little bit of news?
I'm going to jump in just because there's a bit of relatively local news, and it's to do with the Jules Group, Jules Brewery, and they've launched their sort of grand project, and it's in Stone, Staffordshire, which is not that far away from where we live. And they served their first pint of Jules in their sort of their flagship pub to a guy called William Smith, who was a brewer for Jules Pub, and he's affectionately known as Billy Bass. So yeah, it's the Crown Wharf in Stone in Staffordshire. So big shout out to Jules Brewery. They've got a pub in Alsager, the Mere. Go in there quite a lot. Generally drink a pint of Green Monkey when I go in there. So yeah, big shout out to them. But just a big sort of well done, unveiling a new sort of flagship project. So bit of a shout out to Jules.
Yeah, and he was really good in iRobot as well.
He was.
Will Smith.
Okay, yeah. Not the greatest in memory, so most of these references are just going to pass straight over my head.
It wouldn't be news if we didn't have a little bit of Brewdog news.
Seriously, Brewdog again?
Brewdog again,
Okay.
Brewdog again, because they're in the news. They were in the Scottish Sun this time, and they lost 7.4 million in 2020. So they actually didn't make a profit, and they made a loss. That's according to the Scottish Sun. Don't sue us if it's wrong. And they put this down to, obviously, because it runs to the April of this year, the impact of COVID and then some of the negative press. And for I think it's the first time in a long while their expenses have exceeded their income. And that was an income of 238 million as well. So that is, that's quite impressive. And the other bit of news before we hand over to Andy, you'll know that I have someone, is another bit of local news. The Real Ale Trail is running in August. And it might be something that we could look at doing, actually, to be honest with you, all three of us, maybe four if Dave wanted to join us. £8 a ticket, and basically it runs from nearby. So I've got the postcode here, ST102HA, if you want to look it up. It's £8 a ticket for the train, and it's a 5.5 mile stretch train. I think it's a steam train with 1950s carriages, goes back and forth, stops off at 3 stations. You can have a beer in each one and take it on the train with you. And that actually sounds like fun.
Nice.
£8 a ticket, £10 if you want to bring Sophie, though, Andy.
Is that the dog or the wife?
That's the dog. That's the dog. just for clarity. Have you got any news for us then, dude?
At least, something briefly. There's a company making a beer that's 0 carbs. It's called Better Beer. I don't think it's going to be Better Beer with no carbs in it. But, 4.2% beer in America. I'll have more news on it next time.
And did his research again.
Yeah.
It's gone then, guys. Fire. I know. I can guess what you're going to talk about.
Well, strangely enough, in my A for the All Markets, obviously those people that are familiar with the new format, we do an ABC. So mine is A, All Markets around the world and so on. So I'm going to talk about Guinness today, just a little bit of sort of history and a little bit about what goes into their brewing. So I'm going to fire out there first of all, because I suspect there might be a bit of a quiz coming later. So Andy, do you know, I think you know this ad, but do you know, Dave, you might know, don't know whether you will know, when was sort of Guinness founded, when was it first started, and where? Do you know?
1836.
I know where, and that would be the St James's Gate Brewery in Dublin.
Yeah, St James's Gate Brewery in Dublin, yeah.
And the year, I don't know. I'm going to guess it's something like 1752. I do know the length of the lease.
Do you?
Yeah, I think so.
Go on.
999 years.
Oh, it's 9,000 years.
9,000.
Yeah, 9,000 years. So it was, you were close. It's 1759.
Oh, that's
I was about to say that.
Sorry, Dave, yeah.
Yeah, when you read the can.
It does say on the can. So 1759, as Adam correctly said, in Dublin. I believe that Adam has been there. I haven't been there. Somewhere that I'm very much looking forward to going at some point. He basically took out a 9,000-year lease. It was an unused sort of brewery, and it cost him £45 a year for a 9,000-year lease. There was a little bit of talk about them moving, and there was talk about them moving from Dublin and closing it down completely and moving their operation into London. Really? And there was a big sort of negative sort of publicity, and they decided that actually, you know what, we're just going to refurb and renovate where we are, and hence they're now at St James's Gate still. It was opened up, I think, in about 2000 as a sort of visitor attraction, and obviously, you know, millions and millions and millions of people go there. Quick quiz for you then. Which is the third largest Guinness drinking country in the world then?
Nigeria.
How do you even know that? You've definitely researched that before.
I was going to go America.
Well, America's. I think America's fourth. So you've got Ireland, and then you've got the UK, and outside of those two. So Nigeria.
When you said I had Guinness, I actually had the Guinness foreign export.
Oh, really?
And it says on the bottle that it's produced in Nigeria.
Right. Yeah, it is. It is. It's Nigeria. They're the sort of third biggest drinking country. USA is fourth. And I'm just going to talk a little bit next just about this little frothy head. And it's something that was introduced, and you'll notice when you drink the cans, in particular the draft cans, the widget that everybody talks about in the cans, and you open the can and you hear that little sort of effervescent fizz. And they introduced basically nitrogen into the brewing process. And they were saying that actually nitrogen is slightly less dense than the carbon dioxide, CO2. And that's why actually you can get a slightly more thicker head, and that's why you get that sort of smooth bit across the top. So when you pour it, what's actually happening is the introduction of nitrogen into the brewing process means that you get that nice creamy head. And the other thing, and I bet you didn't know this, it's actually labelled as being velvety red as opposed to black.
There you go. Right, it's black.
Absolutely, a pint of the black stuff, as they say. But actually, it's velvety red, allegedly.
There you go.
And then just one other little thing, just about Guinness, really, was a stout. Andy, do you know what a stout is, or was, or what constitutes a stout?
Is it like a large weasel?
Yes, and if you listen to last week's episode, you'll absolutely understand that reference.
I'm not entirely sure, to be honest.
Adam, Dave?
I've not got a Scooby.
I don't know. It's something to do with the brewing process, where they're darkening some of the malts, I think. Is it the way that they're cooked?
Yeah, so basically you've got water, barley, and then you've got roasted malts, and effectively it changes the composition of the process. And historically, it was also to do with the percentage of ABV. So if it was a certain percentage of ABV, it'd be known as a stout, but actually over the years, it's now historically come to effectively be more traditionally known as that type of sort of colour of beer, much sort of darker, sort of smoother colour of beer. So so just a little bit about Guinness, really. Like I say, 9,000 year lease. He hasn't done too badly, absolutely. So yeah, it's just I do like a pint of Guinness. I know Andy's so partial to a decent pint of Guinness. I am looking forward to one in Ireland, I have to admit.
Yeah.
And going back on the theme that Adam mentioned last week, which was actually, you know what, the closer you can get a beer to the actual brewery, the better it is. So yeah, very, very much looking forward to going over to Dublin and sampling one, because I haven't as yet.
No, definitely. And if you do, you have to visit the brewery there, because it is the best pint of Guinness I've ever had, honestly. Phenomenal. Andy?
So most of my research has gone into this. So we've been talking about what makes a Trappist beer, and it's like, you got to be a monk and all that. Well, the Westmalle brewery is all run by monks, and you can actually join them, and they have a 5-step process for doing that. So I'll quickly run through. I'm not going to read it all because it'll take me the whole podcast, but it's basically like you have a meeting with them, and you have like a psychological test to make sure that you're sane, and also you've not like got emotional debt, and you're like you're quite you're self-centered. You like they call it, like, you got some about equilibrium and all this stuff. I was skimmed through it because it's a tough read. But basically, like, you're quite mentally stable, and you're quite you're not like possessive and stuff like that. So then you do all that, and then you got once you get past that, you got a 5-step process of you stay there in their guest house for a couple of days, where you meet everyone, you get to see whether like it's something you want to do and whether they accept you into it. There's then you get to stay there again as part of living in the same rooms as everyone else, so you just continue that process. The second step is entry into the abbey, where you basically you get to keep some of your stuff, but you get to learn their religion, which is the Cistercian way of life. I'm not entirely sure what that is, but yeah, you learn to basically pray, and you basically do a lot of reading, a lot of working, and the brewery stuff, and then you get evaluated on that, whether you want to continue doing it. That's 4 or 5 months. And then the third step is, I can't even say this word, novitiate. So it's a small ceremony where you discard your worldly clothes and receive the white monk's habit. And also you receive a new name as a sign of this conversion, which I thought, it's quite interesting. And then you still got months. That's 2 years even, that step. So you're still not a full-time monk up till now. You've been there about 3 years nearly. And then you got step 4, which is where you do your vows. And this will do a year. This is for a year's process where so yeah, you're still learning to be a monk and all that, and it's like being a prospect. So you sort of like you've been accepted into the community, but then you still got to prove it. The very last step, once you've done 3 or 4 years, you can take your solemn vows, which is when you're like ordained as a monk. And I was just like 5 years dedication just to become a brewer at Westmalle. That's all I'd concentrate on. But it's such a long process.
You can go through that process to be the man of the cloth that did be ordained in.
No, it's a lot quicker if you go to a university.
Yeah.
Does that help? Does that help that I'm already ordained? That I'm already a vicar? No.
No. This is more about becoming the Cistercian religion.
Surely you could just jump like step 1 and 2 and just go to script.
I was hoping fast track to St. Barnabas.
And once you've got this monkhood or whatever it's called, do you then stay there for the rest of your life? Is that the idea?
Yeah, pretty much. So all you do is like sleep, eat, pray, and then brew beer and do work around the abbey.
You see, you added that
like quite a good life.
Eat, sleep, and brew beer. I was like, I was sold. It's when you added and you've got to do some work. I was like, oh, right, yeah, forget that.
Yeah,
if you go on their website, it gives you all like the steps to that, but also you get to see pictures of their abbey and stuff like that. And they have like a library there, and it's massive. You know, like rows of books and stuff like that, and just think quite incredible. Right.
So, if I've got this right, then so there's only a certain number of abbeys now in Belgium that still brew. The monks, do they then? So if they then choose to brew outside of that, can it be classed as a trap? Did you mention was it a Trappist beer that is only brewed still in the monasteries? Is that right?
Yeah. It's got to be in the grounds of the monastery. So
Right.
to be classed as a Trappist abbey beer. Yeah.
But if the monks, I don't know, let's say they decided, actually, you know what, we're just going to sort of ship out and go somewhere else and go and hire an office space somewhere and brew out of there, that would, even though it's the monks, it wouldn't be classed as a Trappist ale because it's not actually brewed on the site.
I think you're thinking into it a bit too much, but
I just wonder whether is it the process? Is it the monks that gives it its name, or is it the place that gives it its name?
It'd be the abbey.
The
Abbey ale,
Yeah.
Is that something that interests you in any way at all, Andy? Would you do that?
No, because I don't think they're like metal music.
You never know.
I might have to shave my beard off as well.
I've been to Caldy Islands just off the coast of Tenby, and that's an island that's habited by monks. And a lot of them look like you do in Brown Rose. I'm not going to lie, they've got the big beards and the haircut. I'm not going to dwell too much on haircut because I've got a similar one. But yeah, I think you look good as a monk, dude.
Yeah. We'll see how my relationship goes first.
I'll edit that out.
Keep it in.
Cool. Cheers for that, dude. So finally then onto the C, and the craft beer that I want to talk about this week was a beer which is, for the best part, known as the first ever craft ale. And I'm sure you guys will have all tried it, because even though it's a craft ale, we talked about what it means to be a craft ale in America. The amount that you produce actually is much larger than you would generally produce in the UK. So have you ever had Anchor Steam beer?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you had them, Dave?
Never heard of it.
Don't think I have.
Out of San Francisco, California. It's a beaut. Now, it's a business that was struggled. It was first producing just regular beers. It's always produced a steam beer, interesting enough, but wasn't overly popular because it nearly went out of business twice. It was affected by numerous earthquakes. Obviously, San Francisco, as you know, being on the San Antonio fault, or San Andreas fault, sorry. the brewery's been damaged and destroyed a couple of times. Now, in 1965, there was a chap by the name of Fritz Maytag, and he was enjoying an Anchor beer in a bar, and he was telling the barman how much he was enjoying it. The guy says, well, make the most of it, because this is a business that is going to be pretty much done by the end of the week. They've not got much time left. And he thought, no, I can't have that. So being obviously Mr. Billy Big, wandered into the brewery the next day, made him an offer, which they then accepted for a few $1,000s. He bought a 51% share in the brewery. And he started making different beers that were deemed as craft beers at that time in 1965. They weren't the common beers that everybody was drinking, although they still kept producing that steam beer. Go on.
Just so, and I was thinking of this, and I don't know whether or not we've mentioned it on the podcast. Actually, what defines a craft beer then? Because you mentioned there that he started making craft type. What actually defines a craft beer? What separates it from a traditional beer or a normal beer?
As we talked, where we talked about the different beers that is popular in America, it's very much the pale ales and the lagers, the light beers. That is their core beers that they will drink, and those are the main market beers that they do. Other beers like their darker beers, the smaller breweries will then generally produce those. So obviously, to be a craft brewer in America, did we say it was 6,000 barrels?
Is that what? Yeah.
Still seems a pretty large amount to me. And then you can't be owned by a large conglomerate, like say if Budweiser owned more than 25% of you cannot be classed as a craft ale, which is interesting, because I'll come to that later, because Anchor Beer still markets itself to this day as a craft beer, and it still says it on the bottle. So, like I say, it was founded originally in 1896 by a German immigrant by the name of Gottlieb Breckel, but then was taken over by this chap, Fritz Maytag. And this steam beer, which he's now famous for, it is actually one of the only companies in California still producing this beer. It's not a common beer, which is obviously one you said you'd never heard of, wasn't it, Dave?
Yeah.
A steam beer is one that's used bottom fermenting lager yeasts, and it's produced at ale temperatures. Obviously, a lager is produced at much colder temperatures. And that gives it a flavour profile, which it takes its characteristics from ale and lager. So if you've ever had it, I've always thought of it as a lager.
Yeah.
But it does have that sort of thick ale quality and a similar sort of taste to those pale ales. It's very similar. But then I always think a golden ale is also quite similar to lagers in its taste. But,
yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. A golden ale looks like a lager, doesn't it?
That's it.
It's that tradition. It is that traditional golden, yellowy sort of effervescent.
That's it. It's those golden hops which give it that lagery taste. And the thing that really made the difference, the thing that really saved the company is prior to this, they only sold draft beers. And he started producing this Anchor steam beer, and he started putting it into bottles. And that is pretty much what saved them. So in 1989, they made, this is taking us back to the historical beers that we talked about, right?
Yeah.
We talked about different historical beers. They made a limited edition beer called Ninkasi. And that's probably about as well pronounced as Andy's monkdom that he was talking about there, because I don't know how it's supposed to be pronounced. And that was named after the Sumerian goddess of beer. And it was based on an ancient Sumerian recipe. So we talked about this in where they were crushing down berries and what have you. And it was made from malts, bread, honey and dates. And there was no hops in it to give it a bitter taste. So it was a very, very sweet beer. But I would have liked to get my hands on a bottle of that stuff. That sounds quite interesting.
Yeah, and it go back to previous episodes when we've spoken about the oldest breweries and what traditionally they put into their ingredients, and we were sort of laughing and joking about I wonder who the guy was. I said, I'll just try that, the sort of the extract from when they were trying to make bread. It's like, that looks tasty, I'll have that sort of thing. But going back years and years and years, you look at some of the ingredients that some of the companies, and obviously you go back to the German where you're only allowed you certain types of ingredients, or the 4 types of ingredients, and slowly over the years, there's been an evolution of slightly different flavors, slightly different ingredients coming in. And it's just interesting the background in terms of like your slightly smaller companies as to how they source their ingredients and what they decide to go into their beers.
Now you say smaller company, that's the interesting thing, because we said there that it still describes itself as a craft beer. Now, Maytag sold the company in 2010, so he owned it for 45 years. But in 2017, it was bought by Sapporo of Japan.
Ah, right, okay, yeah.
So, it still describes itself as a craft beer, despite the fact it's owned by Sapporo, which is a multi-billion-pound company.
What percentage do they have in it, though? Do you have to have over a certain percentage of that?
I'm assuming that they then bought his stake, which was 51%, or whether he secured further ownership. I don't know. That's not clear.
I wonder whether or not it might be the actual process then. So for that beer, so the craft beer, is it the process that they go through and the ingredients that they use that define it as a craft beer as opposed to the ownership of the company? I don't know.
I think it
because Anheuser-Busch or whatever, you know, like Modelo or the big, you know, your big massive Carlsberg, your big massive companies.
In America, it goes down to that the production level and the percentage of the company that's owned it. In the UK, it's the waters are a little bit more muddy. There is no absolute definition of craft ale. So I guess anybody. So when we look at BrewDog, which made 120 odd million pounds in sales last year, they just are they craft brewers? Probably yes, they are by UK definition in terms of the beers that they're producing. Yeah. But there is one beer which I've never tried. They do a number of beers. They do a great porter as well. Actually, they do a great stout that I've tried of theirs. But in 1995, they produced their first Christmas beer and they did it for the first time. They do one every year, and each recipe is slightly different each year. I'd love to get my hands on it. And they don't declare what malts are in it. It's a top secret. They don't declare the dry hop process that they go through. And it's only available November to January. And because obviously it's an American beer, it's quite difficult to get in this country. Himself and Ian Rawlinson, are you from? Do you remember Ian Rawlinson from school? Yeah. He's every year he's tried to get a bottle, and I always say, if you find one, get me one as well. And we've not been successful as yet.
So it's not Christmas themed then. It's just released for Christmas.
I don't know. I never tasted it.
It's not like Christmas pudding flavour.
It could taste
mint.
It could taste. Wow.
No.
Hopefully not. No. Hopefully not, though. Right then. So we've done the news on ABC. Now, normally we have a topic of conversation which we've prepped and prepared for. It's not always obvious, but we have. This time we've done no preparation, which is quite nice. So we're all going to get thrown under the bus again because Dave's got a series of questions that he's going to ask us. So do you want to explain your concept to us, dude?
Yeah. So at the start of this podcast, there's a voiceover thing, and it says education is something you get from this podcast.
Always.
That's you that's saying that, though, isn't it?
Oh, was it? Right. So what I thought would be good, because you guys always talk about the beer you're drinking, the flavours, beers around the world, and all that sort of stuff. But it might be good for listeners, and maybe people in the UK and those that aren't familiar with the UK, just to get some insight into the laws and sort of stats and figures around alcohol in the UK.
Okay.
Let's just fire it off then. So from a legal point of view, I mean, some quite straightforward ones to start with. How old do you have to be to buy alcohol in the UK?
18.
Yeah.
18, but don't you have to look 21 or something like that?
Well, there's a challenge 25.
Challenge, yeah.
25.
Answer this question. You could stitch me right up without a licensee.
It's got to be 18. It's got to be 18. You can consume alcohol younger than that, but 18, I think, is when you can buy it.
Okay, that is correct. And well done, but that was the easy one. What about if you're in a licensed premise? How old do you have to be to drink alcohol?
Now, I think this
14.
I'm going to say 14. Yeah, you can have.
I thought it was
like
10
side
or something.
with your parents.
14, although for some reason the back of my head 12 is ringing a bell, but I'm going to say 14.
What are you going for, Andy?
I'm going 10.
Right, it's 16. So you can.
Good job we never bought that bar.
So you can have it if you're 16 or 17. You can have beer, wine, or cider, but not spirits if you're on a licensed premise. If you're at home, how old do you have to be to drink alcohol?
You say I would say 14 again, but it might be younger than that.
8.
I'm going to say 12.
Andy?
I'll go with 10 again.
5.
No way, 5.
Apparently, as long as you're 5, I mean, why it's okay to give a 5-year-old alcohol, not a 4-year-old? I mean, it's like once you get to 5, it's crazy anyway.
I tell you what, Tilly's next birthday is going to be alright.
Can't wait for that. 5. That's horrendous when you think about it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty shocking.
So you got one of them right. Okay.
Wow.
What about homebrew? What do you know about homebrew in terms of making it at home?
Well, Andy's currently.
Andy's
you're looking into this
Andy's
process,
a homebrew king. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a kit. That's it.
Well, I'll give you a little bit of history. Back in 1880, William Gladstone,
the Potter.
the Prime Minister, decided that too many people were making homebrew, so he introduced a license to make homebrew, which meant all of a sudden, if you wanted to brew at home, you had to pay for a license, and that actually ran right through to the 1960s, when they reckoned there was only 250 people in the UK that had a license to homebrew beer.
Oh wow!
Wow.
Reginald Moulding, Chancellor of the Exchequer in 1963, scrapped that and said, no, that's nonsense. And that's when there was a massive boom in homebrew. So now it's you can make as much as you want, but it's got to be for home consumption. You can't sell it, obviously. And you can't even give it away from your mates.
Is that right?
So I couldn't have bought a bottle around here. If I'd have bought a bottle around here, that's illegal.
Because we had this fabulous idea of making our home brew, taking it out onto the pot and letting people try it and decide which was the best. So we couldn't legally do that.
Legally, no. They'd have to consume it in your own premise. So they'd have to come to your front garden and drink it there. You have to serve from a stall in front garden.
Okay. I didn't know that. I knew that you couldn't sell it without a license, but I didn't realize that if I brew it, I can't then say, right, Dave, try that and see what you think, or Andy, try that. I didn't realize you couldn't do that. Must admit.
I mean, clearly, you're never going to get in trouble for carrying some homebrew around to your mates. A mate of mine makes tons of homebrew all the time. I mean, he's making a couple of he makes wine and beer. We've both got grape vines in our garden. As soon as the grapes appear, we chop all of the leaves off. He sticks them in a bucket, ferments it, adds yeast, makes wine out of the leaves from grape vines.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it any good?
Yeah, it's nice, it's sweet, it's nice.
Could have brought some around tonight.
It's not ready.
Oh.
Just as another one, another one he's making, talking about from when Gaz was saying, who just thought of chucking something in and trying it out. Again, it's a wine. I know this is a beer podcast. It's a wine, but he just got a box of supermarket home brand fruit tea bags, chucked them in a bucket, and throw in some yeast, fermenting away wine.
You got the Duchess. Oh no, sorry.
I need to try the Duchess. It sounds a bit of a cracker.
Just on this aside of flavourings in beer, Andy, this is interesting. I was out for a beer with Gaz on Saturday night. We grabbed a little bit of food. Now, I had a mint julep cocktail, which obviously contains mint and whiskey. He had a beer, and I asked him if he wanted my mint leaves to put in his beer. Guess what he said?
Yes.
I know I said no because I didn't want to spoil Adam's enjoyment of his own drink, but I did say I really think that you need to flavour it fractionally with mint as opposed to just drop a mint leaf. It has to be in the process of actually making the beer as opposed to just
as it sounds wrong. That's why.
We're looking forward to your homebrew with bated breath.
Yes. It's some sort of weird sort of cider apple based drink with mint. No, I don't know. I'm just made that up, by the way.
Are you all buying kits?
The plan, months and months and months ago, the plan was to all buy kits and effectively
get ready for the summer.
But considering we're now in the summer and it hasn't happened, that was the plan. Was that we were all gonna?
So Andy has that. You've got an experimental kit, haven't you?
Yeah, I've ordered a giant metal crab pot thing so you can boil it better, but I'm just waiting for that, and then I'm going to start it. Yeah, I bought the kit and I bought some of the hops and all that separately, and it's going to be a surprise.
You're going to mash it yourself then?
Oh no.
I know that one of our Chris down at the end, he number one roundtable, he has done his own cider, and we had that at the Barrington Park. And I got smashed on it. I was proper
singing Wonderwall about 1:30.
Proper leather, and that was a real good one. That was a real good one. And then I know that Nigel, who is my daughter's best friend's dad, he's done his own homebrew, but again he's done sort of cider based, and his was really good. I haven't got smashed on that, but yet I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure it's time if he does another one, but.
it's improved over the years. My dad used to make it, and it used to be in the brown bottles in the airing cupboard. First time I got drunk was a mate at the back watching. It must have been 86. Was that Euros or World Cup 86?
Was it Mexico?
World Cup, Mexico, Mexico
So,
86.
No, I'm the same age as these guys, so that's not. In fact, legally, I could drink at home.
Yeah, you're okay. Yeah,
I was
absolutely.
over 5, but yeah, it was homebrew that his dad bought down.
You see, I seem to remember my old man did, because we had it when we lived in Linton Place. We had a cellar, and I'm almost certain that he did some homebrew there. I do know that when there was the Cricket World Cup in the mid 80s, and when Pakistan won it, we had like loads of people around, and he had a proper keg on beer and stuff.
Yeah, I remember that.
But I'm sure he did some homebrew as well. So I'll have to ask him about that, and perhaps on the next podcast we'll mention that, because I'm sure he's done it.
It sounds like the sort of thing he would have done. To be fair.
Yeah.
We'll get Big Grey on.
Talk about right. We're going to talk about beer. Well, he can do that, can't he? So.
Go on,
Oh,
give us some more questions, dude.
I just remembered what
Last
the
one
mash is.
on the law. Can you distill at home? You make your own whiskey or spirits.
See, I think that goes down to like moonshining. So in the States,
I'm going to say no.
I'm going to say in the States, it's certainly. Mind you, we had the Scottish Alchemists on in the episode we did about gin, and they talked about making a bathtub gin, but that might have just been
no, they did
the
actually.
botanicals to a spirit. So that might be slightly different. I'm going to say no.
Andy?
I'll say no because it's quite explosive in it.
Yeah, you're all right. It's actually, you can't actually distill spirits without a license at home. So that's legal in terms of drinking. What about legal in terms of driving? Anybody know the legal limit? Alcohol, milligrams of alcohol per 100 mils of blood.
Is it?
Is it we're going for the blood one, not the breath or the other one.
28? 28?
I think it's like 0.2, isn't it? It's proper low. We're like, literally, it's the most stringent laws in Europe, in the UK, I believe.
Andy?
I might be thinking
Per
of
100 millilitres of blood.
It's like 30 mils in it.
It's 80 milligrams.
There you go.
Close.
Yeah, you're close. I tell you what, though, do you ever watch Homicide Hunter with Joe Kenda on the History Channel?
It means nothing to me.
Oh, you've missed a treat there. It's a guy, and basically he solves homicides, as you'd expect. And one of the things he says is when he turns up to a homicide scene, you can tell if the victim has been drinking. You know, it doesn't have to be any great degree of alcohol that they consume, but you can smell the alcohol in the blood. Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Sleep easy, folks.
So I mean, these stats I've got here are all from recent years. They're from 2018, 2019. But what percentage of people, when asked, said that they drove knowing they were over the limit?
I would like to think it's a small percentage.
I'd like to think it's a small percentage, but I'd be amazed if it was a small percentage.
Oh dear. I'll go 33%.
I'll go
33% of people. So it's a random sample. 1 in 3 people said, "Yeah, I'm normally drunk and drive."
I'm not saying it's right, dude. I'm not advocating it.
No, it's just
I was going to go.
I'm playing devil's advocate.
That's a bit of a indictment on society, isn't it?
Hey, listen,
I'll go
don't get me
10.
started on that.
10%.
So, Andy, what are you going for?
As you said, 33 was going to be. I'll say 20.
6.6.
Okay.
Well, that's a lot of people.
Well, that's the same percentage as left blonde.
Do you mean Leffy?
So in the UK in 2018, how many roadside breathalyzer tests do you think were conducted by police?
In what year, sorry?
2018.
2018. 3.2 million.
3.2 million breathalyzers.
Have I gone too high?
28.
Rubbish, mate.
28,000.
Andy?
I was going to say 18,000.
It's 335,000.
I nearly said 280.
Now, what percentage or how many, you can go either way, of them actually were positive?
Oh, 10%.
60.
30%.
16%.
Oh,
Okay.
So in
Right.
2018, over 50,000 people tested positive for.
See, that's quite.
I've been pulled over and breathalyzed, and I've got to be honest, it's quite a scary experience. I'll tell you the story behind it. Right? I was driving to work.
Please do.
Okay. I was driving to work very early in the morning. This car was driving very close behind me. So what do? You accelerate, don't you? It's what you shouldn't do, but it's what you do.
It's what you shouldn't do.
So that's what I did. So anyway, then the lights flashed on behind. I was like, oh, great. So the guy come over and he said, do you realise you're breaking the speed limit? And I was just about to say, yeah, it's because you were driving around my back. So I thought, no, because that's what you wanted me to do. And I've just done exactly what you did. And I know I'm in the wrong for doing it. So I'm not going to give you the satisfaction of agreeing with it. He says, but I'll let you go on the speeding thing. I thought it was good because I've done a couple of speed awareness courses and I didn't want to do another one. Subsequently have done another one.
I've done
a couple of months.
Under 12?
Yeah,
Just.
And anyway, so he says, but as long as you pass the breathalyzer test, then you're fine. Now I'd had 2 beers the day before, and I had them at 6 p.m. and they weren't particularly strong beers. But I tell you what, I was nervous.
Yeah.
You know, it was going, I was twitching, and it passed, and it literally came back 0.0 because it had been 12 hours since it had gone out of my system. But I tell you what, it wasn't a pleasant experience. And I have to say, the officer was a very pleasant individual who breathalyzed with very avuncular chat.
It just reminded me of a story from Big Grey. Brilliant. It wasn't actually said, don't do this, folks. He said, well, a pint leaves your body, is it like an hour or 2 hours or so? He made up some random figure or something.
An hour is what is quoted.
An hour. So there you go. So an hour. So a pint leaves your body after an hour. So he said, if you drink all night, he said,
every hour.
So he said from 10 o'clock, the one you had at 7 o'clock's gone. So I'm like, yeah, it doesn't work like that though, Dan, I don't think. And he was like, so basically I could drink from 7 till 10. And then the one from 7 o'clock will have gone by 8. And then the one from 8 will have gone by 9. So actually, I've only ever got a pint. If I have 1 pint an hour for 12 hours or whatever, I'll only ever have 1 pint in my bloodstream sort of thing. And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, not sure that works like that, if I'm honest.
No.
And it was just the way he told the story. I was like, yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, we need to get him on.
Don't think
Just
so.
to set him straight.
It does significantly differ. I mean, that 1 hour is, an average pint of beer for an average person. I mean, Ada, you're drinking a 12.7, which is probably twice the size of the beer I'm having. But equally, with you, it would probably have the same effect as 1 pint of beer.
Well, it's interesting because obviously back in the day, you playing lots of sport with lots of sort of teams and different people that can have different amounts of alcohol and different strengths of alcohol and stuff. And there was definitely a case, and I'm not saying that any of them were any more compos mentis than the other, but somebody could have a couple of pints and you could sort of tell that they'd had a couple of pints, and then somebody else could have 5 or 6 pints and actually be I say okay, and it's just a tolerance of the alcohol that they have.
It's why a lot of places, including America, will do like competency tests on
Yeah.
the side of the road just to see, how you cope.
And interestingly, you might get somebody that doesn't really drink that much at all, and whatever the legal limit is, a pint or a pint and a half, and then you can drive whatever it is in terms of the number of units. There'll be people that can have that and actually not be compos mentis and feel as though they're being affected by it, and actually you could get somebody else that could have 3 pints and be fine. And actually one of them is legally driving and one of them is illegally driving, and it's actually, and there was a lot of talk a while ago about doing a reaction test, and one that you can't guess, so it might be best 3 out of 5 or something. Basically you do some sort of competency or reaction test.
Dave turns up, gives you a quiz.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, this is the question you don't have to answer any of you, but do you drink when you're driving? And I don't mean because Andy, I can't speak for you, but if you're a mate of these, and I'm by reference, you probably don't. I know these two wouldn't have quite a few beers and then drink, but would you have a beer down the pub with your dinner and then get in your car and drive home? I wouldn't. I never drink.
I have done, and I have done in the past.
I'd have a beer and only a beer.
Now I am, I think, much more conscientious just about, and this goes back to a podcast we did ages ago, just about wife, kids, and the consequences that your actions might have on them. So I'm much more conscious about that than I was. What am I now? 48.
Yeah.
So like 30 years ago or whatever.
I think we're both much more like to press gang our wives into driving.
Yeah. Jenny is a lightweight anyway now. Cheap date and all that, so she can just drive. It's fine. But no, and I'm not. I'll admit that. But in the day, back in the day, I probably have had more than the legal limit and then driven and felt fine and felt okay and got home and. And I won't tell you who it was that once said, "Well, why are you driving?" He's, "Well, I'm too pissed to walk." And that's. But that was what some people felt. They felt as though it was okay just to get in a car, and actually, everybody knows it isn't. And kids, obviously, if you're listening to this, please don't. But I'm much more conscious now of doing that. And to the point where I'll probably just leave my car. Like if I've got my old man, I'll leave my car around my old man's and I'll go and pick it up the following day. Rather than getting in the car late at night or whatever, I'll just go around.
It's not worth it.
No, it's not. And it's just the consequences of it.
Especially things like Uber's so easy to get nowadays.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
just not worth the hassle.
So
it's cheap as well.
Yeah, much more. So I think no, now, but back in the day, I probably would have done.
Andy's keeping quiet there. I'm assuming a no. I don't think you'd say no with your head.
I think, most of the time I wouldn't just have any drink, but there has been one or two occasions I've had like one drink if we've been out for like 3 hours or something like that. But yeah, I'd rather just not have a drink at all. It's too easy nowadays just to.
I once made a mistake we were in Spain and we were staying in a villa and we'd walked down to the local village on holiday, had a couple of pints with dinner. Walked back up and said, right, we'll go somewhere. Got in the car and driven. It wasn't until I got where I was going, I thought, sugar.
Yeah.
I've just had 2 pints and driven. And that really, really shocked me, because I thought, my God, how bad is that? Because it's not, I just holiday mode and it was, probably an hour's walk, but a couple of pints. And because I'm a bit of a lightweight, that probably would have affected my reaction time. So.
Well, it's weird because when we go on holiday, we go abroad and either that's in our own car and we've driven, or we've gone and we've hired a car when we're there. I won't. So I will have one, and then in certain countries that the laws are much more stringent than in the UK. But so I will have one, and that's it. And then what will happen is you get back to the hotel or the apartment and you think, well, I'm back there now, so I'm not going to drive again. I'll have another beer around the pool or whatever it may be if you're on holiday. But I'm much more conscious when I'm abroad about doing it. And whether that's just I'm unfamiliar with the roads, I'm unfamiliar with you driving on the other side of the road or whatever it may be, but I'm much more conscious about doing that.
I've never driven abroad, and to be honest with you, I'm not sure I plan to just for that reason.
Really?
Yeah, it's a comfort thing. I know what I'm doing on the UK roads.
What about if it's a country where they drive on the right? Left, rather.
He's walking home, don't worry.
God, how strong was that one?
I probably wouldn't. So I know when you went to America, you drove, didn't you? I've been to America a few times. Never even crossed my mind.
America was
John did as well. When John he drove like from Vegas to California. And I thought, fair play. Just looking at the roads, the main roads getting out of Vegas, I thought, fair play to you, dude. I'm not sure I could do that.
Once you go out the city, though, it's just like one massive long straight road.
That's what he said.
Yeah,
that's what he said.
I've driven in America, and it's relatively straightforward in terms of there's lots of signposts, but again, just this is our left turn, by the way, for this podcast. But what they do is in America, they name their streets differently than what we name here. So is it the name of the street is the street that you're leaving, not the name of the street that you're going into, effectively? So when you're looking at where you're trying to go, you're looking for the road names, they're actually labelled differently. So it's not the road that you're turning into that you look for, it's effectively the one you're coming off. And they're labelled differently. So it's a bit, that took you some time.
And you can turn on the red light if you're turning right.
Yeah, because I got beat. So there's a guy behind me. I nearly turned. I was like, "What's your problem?" And then I'm like, "Oh, maybe I could go," sort of thing, and and then I went. And then the other thing is when you're driving, and effectively cars can join from both sides, so they get like access roads, and you can get cars that join both sides, and they don't have a slow and a fast lane. They just have a go forward lane, and you just pick a lane and drive, and you've got cars that are coming past you on the left
7
and the
lanes.
right, and you've got 5 or 6 lanes and all that sort of stuff. So it is a bit hairy. Well, once you've done it, once you've done it for a few days, you sort of get used to it. But certainly the cars coming past you on both sides all the time, and you'll get roads that join. Yeah, that's a bit weird, but
Nah, not for me.
So back to the UK. One final question relating to drinking, and how many road deaths roughly in a year? I've got the 2018 figure, but it's reasonably static last few years.
Okay.
This is where one or more drivers have tested positive in a breathalyzer test and been killed.
5,000.
I'll go 3,000. Still a lot.
Andy?
It's 20,000.
20,000 deaths from alcohol related. It's 240.
That's good. There you go. That's good news, isn't it? That's good news in many ways. That we all thought
It's 240 too many.
It's 240 far too many. Yeah, but it's certainly less than we thought.
But then when you put it in that context, it's way less than you thought. So we're
It's
doing
nearly one every two every 3 days.
Yeah, but only, and I don't mean this in a diminished way, like as Gaz was making out, it's 240 lives, but 335,000 breathalyzer tests, and the drink driving limit is quite high. And, there's a lot of money that goes into drink awareness, and it's only, and again, this is in inverted commas, 240 deaths a year.
Yeah, and there is, I suppose, there is a lot more about drink aware and be responsible and all of that sort of stuff.
But is that money invested wisely? Because it is, like I say,
That's the question.
240 people is, like I say, it's far too many. It's 240 people too many.
Yeah,
but it's tiny compared to the number of people that die every year.
It is. But
So that's
there's a needlessness to it.
So 240. That's people that have died when one of the drivers or the driver have tested positive or been over the limit.
There's just in context. There was one in 2018 figures, but about 1,400 serious injuries. That's life-changing injuries.
Yeah.
And then there's about another 6,000 minor injuries.
Yeah.
So overall, that 10,000 people are affected.
And that's
for the grace of God, isn't it?
Yeah, that's quite. That's a shocking figure, really. And I just say the 240. I thought it's higher. We all thought it's higher, but
don't
it's
get
still
me wrong. When I take relief that it's a lower figure than I thought it was, I thought it was a larger problem. Maybe because, like you say, the way it's advertised, the way it's targeted, but the fact that it is advertised and targeted is maybe what keeps it low.
Yeah,
I think that's the point. If it wasn't for all the money going into that 240 might be maybe not the sort of figure Andy gave it. Was it 30,000 or 20,000? But it may be in the thousands rather than the low hundreds.
Yeah.
The advertising changed. It changed its tone, and I think it might have been the early 80s, where basically they'd advertised drink driving on the telly. I was basically saying it was a bad thing to do. But the trouble is, everybody knew it was a bad thing to do, but they wanted to get home and they wanted to do it. But they changed it in the early 80s, basically to say that this is what people's opinion of you. This is how people view you, and that is ultimately what swayed people's opinion to stop doing it.
It's a societal thing, and there's in Scotland the drink driving limit is 50 milligrams rather than 80. And the argument to not lower it in England and Wales is that it won't really make any difference because the people that are going to drink and drive, whether it's 50 or 80,
still drink and drive.
It's not going to make any difference. And all you'll end up doing is catching more people that had a couple of pints the night before that may or may not have had an accident, and the cost of that is just enormous.
I had a work colleague going back a number of years, and he got banned, and he actually got pulled over the following morning. So he'd been to a party, been drinking. He made what he thought was a sensible decision. So he I don't know. He said he taxi or walked home or whatever it was. And then he went back in the morning to pick his car up, but he picked his car up. I think he said he stopped drinking about midnight, maybe about 12:30. And so he got home. He said he had 5 or 6 hours kip and then walked to go and then get his car. Got in his car the following morning. Police pulled him over and he's just over the limit. So he got pulled over. That just shows you that actually it can stay in, he'd obviously had quite a bit at a party, sort of made the good decision to leave his car there, and you know, and obviously in hindsight, you know, you leave it another couple of hours and you don't quite go and get it as early, and so, but it just shows you that the effect that it can have. Even the following morning, he got pulled over, and it wasn't, you know, he wasn't 3 or 4 times over the limit or anything like that. He was just over the limit, but he was over the limit and he was driving, and he got, you know, he actually got a ban for it, and it's like a bit unlucky, but for making a smart choice, and that just shows you that you know, the decisions that you make, and actually, you know what, folks, if you are going to drink a lot, just don't get in a car and just leave it till much later the following morning if you're going to pick your car up, and you know, because you don't want to fall foul of it the following morning, because you can still be affected by it. So
Absolutely.
And go for the alcohol free. I mean, I know that you were talking on a recent podcast. I think it was Andy. You were talking about I think it was a wheat beer you'd had recently, or a Dutch beer that was alcohol free. And I think you were saying it was okay, but it was just a bit lighter, not quite there. I had the wife bought me, Catherine bought me some Huygon, not Huygon, and she'd actually bought it in error. She didn't realise it was alcohol free, but it was in tins, 330 tins, I think they were. And I'd had one, and she said to me, "What do you think of that beer?" And I didn't twig quick enough that she's asking me for a reason. But I just said, it just felt a bit lighter. It just wasn't quite the same. But I said that maybe it's because it's come out of a tin. And she said, actually, it's alcohol free. But actually, I could have drank it. Now, I find it a bit sweet to have too many, but a couple of them, I could have quite happily have drank that and it not been an issue.
I'd be interested to know Gaz's opinion on that one, then, because you love the Who.
Yeah, and it's we've sort of covered this in a previous podcast, haven't we? And I said to Andy, because, you know, obviously Andy and Adam to a lesser extent, but Andy likes his quite high volume ABV beers, and I said, if you could have a beer that effectively looked the same and tasted the same but didn't have, because it was the episode we were talking about the expansion of alcohol-free bars and drinks, and in particular in America opening up venues that literally just sell alcohol-free beer, and I said to Andy, I said, if it looked the same and it smelled the same and it tasted the same, would you go? And I suppose that the answer maybe is, I don't know. I'd like to think that we would go, but then Adam mentioned the little buzz that you get after having 2 or 3 pints, and the feeling of the warming feeling inside, and not going too far and drinking so much that you get drunk, but it's just that nice warm sort of fuzzy feeling that you get after a few beers.
It relaxes you, it removes inhibitants, it makes you feel confident. It's a completely different mindset.
But if the drink was, if everybody in that venue, you know, was effectively the same in terms of it looks the same, it smells the same, it tastes the same, you know, you do, and we go back to, and we joke about the blindfold test that we're going to do at some point, you know, if you put an alcohol-free beer down and said, right, what do you think of that? Whether or not we'd say, yeah, lovely that. Well, can you see yourself drinking that most of the night? Yeah, absolutely. But then do you miss out on something because you don't get that warm, fuzzy feeling after 3 or 4 pints, whatever? I don't know.
I think it depends on the person you are. If you're more of an extrovert talker person, probably like you, Gaz.
Yeah, maybe.
You'd probably be fine without a beer. I'm probably a bit more like Adam.
Yeah, I'm sure.
More of an introvert, more of a joining the conversation rather than the one that's leading the conversation. Yeah. So a couple of beers for me, I think, is always great. Depends who you're with, but you know, I think it does make a difference to me psychologically.
Well, I know we covered this previously, Andy, but would you drink alcohol-free beer if it smelled, looked, tasted the same?
Yeah, I would. I need a couple of beers to get me going, like chatting away, because I just tend to sit there.
We just hate people, don't you? Full stop.
Yeah, that's the problem. But yeah, I like the little buzz off a beer. But it never does taste the same, though. Maybe one day they will make it taste the same, but until then, I'm sticking with that alcohol.
Stick with the high ABV. I mean, obviously, now we're coming out of COVID, it'd be great to get Andy down and we can do the blind taste test, and we'll definitely do one for me with a certain fruit in it, and we'll do perhaps an alcohol-free one with Andy and just see where we go. And
we'll do them all. But for now, have you got any more questions, Dave?
Well, I got I got some, and there's one is a bit more of a whole topic, so I don't know where to leave that for another podcast in the future.
Tell us what it is, and we'll let you know.
Yeah. Well, it's on the same theme. It's about alcohol and health and society.
Okay.
So we can plow into that, or we can pitch it later.
We can go a little bit longer tonight. We don't mind, do we?
No, I'm good.
All right. Okay. So we talked about the legality and drink driving and that side of things. So the health impact of alcohol, which is, it's a beer podcast. We all enjoy drinking beer, but there are consequences to drinking beer. It's ethanol essentially. Mm-hmm. It's described as a psychoactive substance, causes physical and mental harm. Lots of, I think there's over 200 diseases associated with alcohol. So I think it's just good to talk about that because you don't have to listen to this podcast and it may bring awareness. So
it's a valid point, and it's something I thought about when we decided to change the podcast into a beer podcast. There are consequences to that you have to think about. That you're promoting something that can be detrimental to people's health, and that's. But at the same time, though, you can enjoy it and you can enjoy it sensibly, and that's what we here at TBR promote, isn't it?
Yeah.
We it's great to have a beer, but it's great to enjoy it sensibly. Tonight I'm sat here, I'm having 2 beers, you're having 2 beers, Gaz has had 2 or 3, but he doesn't have to get off work in the morning. He's all good.
Summer holidays.
He's all good in the holidays. Yeah, he's a teacher on the summer holidays, but it's making about this. It's making those sensible decisions for yourself. So I think these are subjects which are important to talk about. So yeah,
I think what we try to do here, TBR, is raise awareness of the different types of beer out there, the different flavors, the different, the different processes, and we're trying to promote or trying to educate people in the beers that are available. The flip side, obviously, is what we don't want to do is we don't want to promote and encourage people to go out and drink beyond their limits, and we want to encourage people to drink responsibly and sensibly and all of that. And what we try to do here is highlight maybe a couple of different types of beers. I know Adam has a different beer every podcast, and it's just informing people as to there isn't just your traditional beers out there. There's lots of things that you can try. However, there is a social, a behavioural, a physiological, psychological impact of drinking alcohol.
Yeah, I mean, I from listening to this podcast, since from the entire podcast, because beer crops up, there's always cropped up.
Yeah.
But certainly since it's been beer, the focus is very much on the quality and variety and just trying something new, not about I drank 9 pints last night and got smashed. Exactly. That's not what it's about.
No. No, but I do think it's certainly something that maybe we need to think about. We can certainly sort of moving forward talk about maybe the impact that drinking can have, and if you drink irresponsibly, the impact that might have, sort of thing. But I certainly think that what we're doing here, as I say, we're raising awareness of the different types of beer. We're not necessarily raising and telling people go out and get smashed.
No,
we're not. That's not really. And there might be podcasts out there that do that, but that's certainly we're not one of them. But no, I think it's a valid point. I think it's something that we need to be aware of, and our listeners will need to be aware of. And something that definitely we could investigate, and we could look at and discuss.
I got some figures.
Yes, crack on.
Go on, dude.
So that in the format of quiz, then, just to get a number off you. So, how many people in the UK? And these are all more estimates than anything else, probably. How many people do we think in the UK show signs of alcohol dependence? So that's where, there's a problem.
I fear that number's going to be quite large.
Yeah.
I do feel that number's going to be quite large. I don't know.
Alcohol dependent.
I'm going to go
dependent. So it's not dependent. We're not talking about alcoholics. We're just talking about someone that, has to, when they come home from work, they just have to have the glass of wine, or they've got to have the beer every day, or even just maybe not even every day, but there's a need to have it. And if you said don't drink for the next 6 months, you'd have a problem doing that.
200,000.
Oh, see, I was going to go 70,000 and assume the figure was higher.
I'll go 200,000.
Andy?
So now you're thinking, is that me?
Well, I did preface saying I don't really know you, Andy. So and you don't have a cap on at the moment, but you answer your own questions, mate.
Sounds like an intervention. I'd go 200,000. I think on this one.
Okay, the estimate is 7.5 million.
Oh my life!
Wow.
And I don't know. Again, this is not a question you have to answer. Whether you, any of us, think I go through periods where I definitely drink more than I should. But for me, more than I should, and this is on a podcast that my wife and daughter Alice, shout out to Alice, is going to listen to. But if I've drank more than 6 or 7 bottles of beer and the equivalent of a bottle of wine a week, I think I'm drinking too much, and that's just normal 4 or 5%. If I do that regularly, I start to think, hang on a minute. And I'll take a break or I'll pare down from it.
I probably drink weekly way too much.
Do you know how many units there's the recommended?
Yeah, 14.
It's 14. It used to be higher from them, but they changed it to 14.
Yeah.
I drink way more than 14 units a week. I've done what I've drunk tonight.
More than 14.
I don't think I've
No,
drunk
I
more
don't
than
think
14
yeah,
tonight. So 1.8 units for one, so 2, 4, 6, 8, so
7.
just less than 8, so 7.5 units or
Half
whatever.
your weekly.
Half my
allowance.
weekly allowance.
On
That
Tuesday.
that ignores the ones that I drank before I came.
He's on holidays. Okay.
Let's keep saying that.
But no, I know I drink more than 14 units a week. Can I go without it? Yes. I actually went 2 weeks whilst at university without beer. I mean, going back in the day, and
30 years ago.
I know, yeah, but I've done well there.
Well, not just
Did
that.
you do
Actually.
dry November or something?
Well, I was going to say today I've spent my time going back over the podcast and making a list of every single beer that's been drunk on this podcast. And yeah, Gaz did do, I think, 3 weeks of alcohol free.
Yeah.
And Andy's done a couple of weeks when he was quite poorly.
Yeah.
I did dry January this year, but the problem I have with dry January is you can't start on the 1st of January. You're still on holiday. So I always start it from the first Monday of January and then do 4 weeks. That's my January. Because if it's a Saturday and Sunday, it's the 1st and 2nd of January.
Well, theoretically, you can do Stoptober as well, can't you? That's the other thing as well that they do, is they do the Stoptober for like the cancer cancer awareness or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I have gone through periods where I haven't drank, and am I dependent on it? No. Do I like a drink? Yes. Do I enjoy drinking? Yes. Do I drink too much? Probably yes. And if Jenny was on here, my wife, who is a doctor, she would absolutely 100% say I drink too much, and constantly goes on at me for the amount of alcohol that I drink. Every week, do I drink more than 14 units? Probably. And it's weird because I think if you spoke to a lot of people, they probably do, but do they admit it? Probably not.
No.
You go to the doctor, how many do you drink? Ooh, 5 or 6 pints a week. Really, do you? Come on.
When I go to the dentist, how many units a week do you drink? What's the recommended allowance? 14. It's 14.
Yeah.
And you know it's a lie, because with me it's probably nearer 16, 18, 20, something like that.
But I'm sort of making this figure up, but almost Jenny is a bit like, you just double it. If someone says, how much you drink? Between 12 and 14 units a week, that probably constitutes between 24 and 28 a week type thing.
So probably right.
So am I dependent on it? No. Could I?
I drink 7.
I think
Tonight.
This is 0.
Oh, okay.
Could I go without it? Yeah. Do I want to? And this is the thing, I suppose. Do I want to? And this is the question, I suppose. Do I want to? No. Could I? Yes. And the fact that I answered, do I want to? No. Does that mean I'm dependent? Yeah, and it's that type of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I thought that is a real point of self-reflection, isn't it?
Well, Andy or Adam, are you throwing in with any personal reflections on that one?
No, I mean, I enjoy beer, and probably enjoy a beer most nights. Is the truth of it? I don't drink an awful lot in terms of, and I've never gone to bed drunk when I've stopped in at night by myself having a beer at home. but I'll have a couple of beers, and that's not unusual. That said, when you base it on those figures that you give us, a couple of beers is probably too many in terms of health.
Every
You know,
night.
if you think, if you go to the shop and you buy, and this is without the really heavy ABV stuff, but you go and buy a 24 pack of Bud or Carling or whatever, and you have 2 bottles of Bud a night, and you have that every night for a week. That's more than your recommended weekly allowance.
100%. Yeah.
Now, when you look at that, you think, oh, okay, we're probably drinking too much.
Yeah, that's it. It's a difficult subject, that one, isn't it? To really look at yourself and think, actually, do you know what? Do I have an issue? Because I don't feel that I do. I just feel I enjoy a beer.
And that's where I'm at. I don't feel as I've got an issue, but I do enjoy having a drink. And
This feels like that gambling episode we did.
it does, but yeah, I didn't quite expect to be reaching into my soul.
Well, in terms of the units, what is classed as a high strength, and I know probably isn't for I mean, it would be for me, but 5.2, a pint of 5.2 is 3 units. So if you're drinking a pint of 8 or 9, you're already up to 6 or 7 units. You have 2 of them, that's your weekly allowance in 2 pints of strong beer.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing is, and I was talking to John about this actually when he dropped this bottle of beer off, and he was chatting to Liam, who, to be fair, was kind enough to send me a bottle of beer from the beer emporium there. So thank you, Liam. But it's one of those things, with one of those beers. Now, I've drank that actually a lot quicker tonight because I'm talking and I want to lubricate my throat while we go. If I was enjoying that in a pub, I would have drank it much slower, would have been chatting and what have you. And I think that's very much the nature of the beast in terms of those strong beers like that. You do tend to drink a little bit slow, and then you'll have something much lower alcohol in between. So something like that, which is sort of a large bottle of beer and is quite strong, you're going to drink over a night. And in the time that you do that, the average person is probably going to smash down 3 or 4 pints of Carling while you drink it. And it sort of equates itself out if you are a sensible drinker. And to be honest with you, the type of person that's going to drink Carling ain't going to pay 35 quid a month.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and I think we mentioned that in a previous podcast. Again, I think it's Andy that mentioned the different, and it might have been when I spoke about, was it last week when I spoke about the all-inclusive stuff, and Andy was like, but they're different types of drinkers, aren't they? You got the guys that will pay for your stronger ales, but they'll probably savour them and drink them slower because they enjoy and you've then got your typical lager out that just chug, Carling or Bud or whatever. No disrespect to those 2 companies. If you want to send us any freebies, then that's fine. But it's that type of, it's that type of thing. It's what you drink and how you drink it, I suppose.
Definitely. Andy, anything on that?
Keeps his cards very close to his chest.
I know before lockdown, it was like I'd have on a Friday afternoon, I'd have a couple of pints with work, and then that would have been me most of the time. But since lockdown, like I think there was a period last year, September, October wise, I was spending like 200 quid a month on like my beers, and then I was just smashing them like every night. I'd be like, "Oh, sun's out, let's have a drink," and I'd be like, "These like 10% beers." So I was trying to work out of the units. I must have been like 50 units a week or so. It would have been a lot. I'm not so bad now. I'm trying to just do it on Tuesdays and the odd weekend, but yeah, we'll see how it goes.
And Andy, I mean, again, you don't have to answer these questions, but did you reflect on that and think, you know what, this is too much, or was it the cost, or was it like this is too much alcohol?
It's too much. I started as soon as I was a sort of couple of months into it. I was like, I better just cut this down a bit now. It's hurting my wallet a little bit. But my coolness was up. That's the main thing.
Like Andy says, these are unprecedented times. Though. I'm not going to make an excuse for it, but in terms of mental health and everything, the pressures that people are under, sometimes, whether rightly or wrongly, people will use alcohol as self-medication.
And that's when you then fall into the category of having a problem.
Absolutely.
Because you've come home from either you've come home from work and it's been very stressful, or you spent the day with the kids homeschooling, your partner's come home and your partner's done their shift at looking after the kids, and you've grabbed that bottle, you've had that glass of wine. The problem then is that becomes 2 glasses, and then it's a bottle, and then it's every night, and then it's drip, and you're in a problem. So just to move on to just some stats really, guys, you're other half's a doctor. How many alcohol-related doctor appointments per year?
Oh God.
Not you personally.
Oh right, okay. I was struggling to count them then. Joking, by the way. Hundreds of thousands.
Ad?
Yeah, I've got 200,000.
Andy?
Do you mean like ones that are directly they've gone in because of an injury, or they've got like
this is anything to do with alcohol, so it could be an
dependency
injury,
or an injury.
could be a fight. You could be somebody who's been punched from somebody.
Hundreds of thousands.
I'm going to like 1.5 million then.
$1 million, Andy, go on then.
Yeah, I was going to say about 2 million.
Right, 10 million.
Yeah.
10 million a year.
Yeah. It's ridiculous, isn't it?
It's scary actually. And then things like weed are illegal. It doesn't
Well,
make any sense.
that's another conversation.
It doesn't make any sense, does it?
And then hospital appointments, following on from.
Again, I dread to think. Very, very high hundreds of thousands.
I'd go 20 mil.
No, I'll go with Andy, 20 mil.
No, it's actually much lower than that. It's 340,000, but it is about 1 in 50 hospital appointments are caused or related to alcohol.
1 in 50. Oh wow,
that is a huge number. I mentioned earlier there's about 200 different medical conditions. Alcoholism and liver are the obvious ones. But
so here's the question then: why is it legal and cannabis isn't?
Wow, we'll come on to that in a second. Just last question in terms of the grim stats before we get onto that debate. How many people die from alcohol misuse? So that again, it could be alcoholism, it could be liver failure, it could be falling off a bridge.
15,000.
25,000.
Andy?
I'd go with 5,000.
Not too odd, not bad guess. 7,500.
Okay.
So you're thinking back to 240 on drink driving.
Yeah.
The wider thing, 7,500 people. But that is the thing, and weed is not addictive, whereas alcohol is.
Yeah.
And there's a school of thought that if alcohol was discovered today, it would be illegal in 6 months' time.
Yeah. 100%.
And the question is, well, why do you think it's not made illegal? Why is it not a Class A drug?
Tax
income.
And the tax income from alcohol per year is roughly in the UK?
Billions. $1 billion.
Yeah, I'll go with Kazza.
It's about 12 billion.
Okay, there you go, yeah.
Of which about 3 billion of that is purely from beer.
Yeah. And that's a similar conversation in terms of the tobacco market as well, and the tobacco industry, and obviously
9 billion from smoking, 3 billion from gambling. So massive numbers, and there's also about 750,000 people employed related to alcohol. So that's your bargain booze, other off license are available. I think that's what you guys say. Pubs, restaurants, licensed space, all that sort of stuff. So there's huge numbers of people.
Yes, and I suspect, although I don't know, although it might seem quite high when the government say we're spending £50 million a year on, advertising the dangers of drinking and smoking and gambling, but actually that 50 million sort of pales into insignificance compared to because you're compared to the that's what I'm saying, it's the tax that they get. So if they
afford for us to stop,
absolutely, all of a sudden if they made drinking, gambling, smoking illegal, that's a massive dent. And actually, the economy would just collapse just because of it.
Well, there's the taxation is about 12 million. Now, there's two measurements of the cost of that. They reckon the cost of policing an NHS, so the direct cost to the taxpayer, as in money that's paid, is about 3.5 billion. So you're looking at a £7-ish billion profit. But then there's another measurement, which is called the societal measurement, which is factoring in everything. So emotional stress, putting a financial thing on that. So if you've got into a fight innocently, beaten up by somebody that's drunk, you spent 2 months at home carrying, not going out your house, whatever, that kind of thing. There's your loss of income, there's insurance payouts, there's crime, all of that sort of stuff. If you look at that as a cost to society, which aren't direct financial costs, they reckon it's more like 21 million. So it depends on how you want to measure it. Obviously, the government is only going to measure it as pounds and pence, in which case it's a £7-8 million, £8 billion.
It's $1 billion.
Gain.
It's £1 billion profit in the economy, and that's why they don't do it. And I remember years ago they were talking about it's actually sport and tobacco industry sponsorship of sport. Back in the day, you had like cricket, you had the John Player special 40 overs, and you had lots of tobacco related to sort of darts and Formula One. Formula One was a huge one, and obviously they've sort of cut back on that. But the flip side of that is that they won't make it illegal because the income that the government receives from taxes is so astronomical that actually that would create a massive dent in the budget and the economy. So they can't. And what they do is they hope to deal with it and try to say they're going to prevent it. But actually the numbers that they are probably spending in terms of trying to prevent it pale into insignificance when you compare the income that they get.
On a philosophical stance, though, that's troubling, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all based around money. It's
100%. Money makes the world go round, dude.
I know, but money is a construct that we have made ourselves
Yeah.
to separate the people who have it from the people who have it. That's bizarre. I still find money a very bizarre concept.
It is, and I'm going to make up the stat now, and I can't for the life of me remember. Surprisingly, and is it something like? Is it like 10% of the world's wealth is owned by 1% of the world's people, or some, or the other way around? Is it? Or whatever, 90% of the world's it's 10% or something. Yeah. So that's like when you think about that, and did they say somebody like Bill Gates or Sheikh whoever they could turn around and say if they gave everybody in the world a tenner, they'd still have 100 million in the bank or whatever, and you just think like. The small number of people that actually hold the wealth of the world, sort of thing. But again, that's a completely different.
The weird thing is that this earth has enough resources for us all. Yeah,
if used correctly.
That's not how it's spread.
No, absolutely not. No.
So you're allowed 2 left turns.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was a left turn. So if we do another left and a left, we're back on track.
Yeah, we've gone full circle.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I think that pretty much brings us very much to the end of this podcast. We've overrun a little bit, but no doubt during editing we'll take a little bit.
Yeah, we'll take a bit out. Yeah, absolutely.
So who wants to say their farewells and their Springer's final thought first? Andy, do you want to go first, dude?
Yeah, it's a good one. It makes you think, and it is something we need to talk about more in depth. The maybe the financial aspect and also the health. Not benefits, but the other word, the opposite. the bad stuff. Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, thanks for coming on and questioning us as well. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's a slightly different sort of feel for the episode. I enjoy being put in as much as we said I didn't earlier on. I do enjoy being thrown under the bus in terms of not really knowing what's coming. It's some quite interesting sort of philosophical sort of conversations that we can sort of carry forward. Made me think, made me reflect, possibly made me reflect that I drink too many units of alcohol a week. But I knew that anyway. So, appreciate Dave coming on. Look forward to next time. And we can maybe look at exploring one or two of these sort of thoughts in a bit more detail.
100%. Dave?
Yeah, it's been good. I've never been on a podcast before, first time for me, and I was a little apprehensive. I mean, I obviously know Gaz and Adam really well, so I thought I could throw pretty much anything at them. Andy, I don't, but I do now, so that's good. So it's I've enjoyed it, and I like the way that you engaged in the conversation, and that's I think the great thing about this podcast, and it's always been the podcast from Beans Done Stuff episode 1. It's always very open, honest. We'll just talk about three white guys from Cheshire, whatever it is that Gaz says.
Absolutely,
and you just say that it is, and we're just people, and I think that's great.
100%. And thank you for coming on and asking us these questions, because it's probably something that we've not looked at, but it's been in the background of everything that we've done since we've started doing it as a beer podcast, and probably a little bit beforehand.
It's challenged us, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has challenged us, and we've asked questions that it's made us look introspectively at ourselves and what we do. And hopefully, if you're listening at home, wherever you are in the world, that you'll ask those questions of yourself and those around you. And I think that's important, is to always ask those questions. I've enjoyed it. Certainly, we didn't know what Dave was going to ask us when he turned up.
No.
And it certainly wasn't what I was expecting, but definitely I've enjoyed it. And certainly, no, I've lost words actually for the first time in a long while. But no, certainly, it's thrown an unusual aspect on this podcast that we don't normally cover, and I think probably we needed to.
Yeah, and I think it's put it out there. I think we've answered the questions that Dave sort of posed to us truthfully. I think it's made us maybe reflect on how we're perceived, what we do on the podcast, and it certainly will be worth reflecting on some moving forward. And I've enjoyed it. It's been a challenging podcast in a good way.
Yes.
And yeah, look forward to Dave coming on next time, and let's look at exploring some of the things we've spoken about.
100%. And let's find some questions for Dave next
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Turn the tables.
100%. And so, we'll end this one as we always end them, and say, until next time, when no doubt we'll have plenty more stuff to talk about. Take care.